This is the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we teach you the proven methods to grow your seven-figure business to 10 million and beyond. Please welcome your host, Brett Gilliland.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. I have another outstanding guest with us today. He's somebody actually I've known for a number of years, but we've only recently reconnected. His name is Jeremy Harrison. Jeremy is the founder and lead marketing strategist at Spire, which is an Ohio-based marketing agency. Jeremy and his team help leaders unlock growth, plan smarter strategy, and build stronger teams, along with delivering on all those amazing marketing deliverables that they help out with. Jeremy knows firsthand the joys and struggles of starting and scaling a business. He knows both those things. Jeremy has some experience working for organizations that were on the brink of shutdown and said, you know what, I'm just to start my own thing. So Jeremy started Spire in the spare bedroom of his home back in 2006. Today, Spire has offices in 3 cities in northern Ohio. He employs 22 full-time employees, and he embraces his past in business as a powerful way to make a lasting impact on customers, employees, and the community. In spare time, Jeremy is a private pilot, plays the piano, enjoys family and road trips, and is Jeep Wrangler. He and his wife have been married since 2000, and they have a son who's a junior in high school. So thank you, Jeremy, for taking time to be with us today.
Thanks, Brett. It's great to be here.
All right, so we're going to jump right into what everybody's here to find out, Jeremy, and that is to get to know you a little bit, and then more importantly, your scaling journey. What you've learned is you've gotten past that $1 million mark and then continued to grow and learn through some of those predictable challenges that happen. So let's jump into your agency first. Why don't you tell us about the services you provide so that everybody has a little bit of context about your business?
Yeah, so we are a marketing agency based in Northern Ohio. As you mentioned, we've got offices in 3 cities in Northern Ohio. And our focus is really on businesses that are in the local. We actually serve businesses all over, but a lot of our businesses are within a manageable drive distance from one of those offices, which has some advantages that we can actually sit down face to face with our clients and get their ideas up on whiteboards and just really build a relationship in that way. And some of the services that we really specialize in is we do a lot of B2B marketing and also just businesses that need leads for sort of big ticket items. And so one big part of what we've zeroed in on is account-based marketing and bringing that sales and marketing team together so that they can work together and create better results than trying to be pulling sometimes in 2 opposite directions. And so a lot of our digital marketing that we do for people with digital ads and websites and landing pages and social and all that is driven toward helping them be effective with account-based marketing.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, it's a pretty unique situation you're in where you have the physical presence in those 3 different locations. You serve a broad audience, but it sounds like you're really trying to connect with and impact businesses in your local area, which is fun.
Yeah. Well, and when we went through the Elite Forum, a big part of that was getting clear even on your purpose, that star in the sky that you're always heading toward. And for us, that was the idea that it isn't just about helping a business grow, but it's recognizing that when the right businesses in communities grow, that creates a ripple effect that impacts the community. And so if we can help businesses grow in these communities, the communities won't be the same. And that's an exciting thing for us too.
Yeah, you guys are leaving your mark all over. That's awesome. Okay, well, let's get into your journey as a 7-figure business owner. You crack through that $1 million mark, which only 3 to 5% of businesses ever do. And you find yourself maybe partially saying, all right, we've done it. We got to this place.
Now it gets easy, right?
Yeah, it's easy. No big deal. And then it's like, oh, there's some new challenges that I'm trying to figure out how to navigate. So I don't know how well you remember that time going through those transitions, but I'd love to just mine your experience a little bit here for some of the challenges that popped up for you or that felt newer to you and what you learned to grow through those. So let's start off with whatever kind of jumps into your mind as maybe one of the biggest challenges that you faced as you started to scale.
Yeah, I think first of all, I love that. I think you referred to it as a ceiling, and it definitely felt like that $1 million mark. And it felt almost like quicksand in a way where we were through it, but then we just sort of got stuck right in that range for a little while and for several years, really. I'm proud to say that we started Spire in 2006. And for 17 consecutive years, we've had our best year ever. We've grown every year for 17 years, but for several years, and it was right around that $1 million mark, it was pretty flat growth, like single digit, just trudging and just feeling like we had to work so hard to stay at that level and just have this marginal little bit of growth. And so that was tough. And I think there was just a lot of things, the idea that you guys talk about, the threes and the tens and the moving from one level to the next, that there's a lot of new challenges that come up with that. And I think a lot of it has to do with getting the right people in the right seats and getting clear on even how we position our product to a specific market of people. And so these are all things that we were working on at that time to try to figure out. And since then, we made some key decisions, not only with people and leadership and how we position things there, but also we made a hard decision to move upstream a bit, the size of clients. We realized that our marketing services had become more sophisticated, and we were still trying to shoehorn those services into a package for a really small business. And everybody was frustrated because we were delivering a lot of service, but we were trying to squeeze price and everything down in a way that would make sense for those businesses. They maybe didn't fully appreciate what we were trying to bring, and we were struggling to be profitable during that time. And so by just making a positioning move to a little bit more sophisticated or a little larger business allowed us to offer those marketing services and to do it more profitable. But there's a lot of things that came along with that too, about how you position your offer and how you close the sale and all those things that go along with it.
So lots of adjustments. You can almost equate these to growing pains, right? You see our kids go through some things as they're growing up, and you see them struggle. Sometimes it's actually physical growing pains, but other times it's just the mental and emotional pains as they're maturing. Yeah. There's something equivalent to that in an organization, kind of get through these awkward teenage years almost. And
yes, awkward's a good word for it.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked about quicksand and feeling kind of stuck, like you got there, but then it was like, oh, can't quite get through this. And by the way, congratulations on having a positive growth year every year. Like that's nearly unheard of anymore. And even if it was relatively flat, to not allow that business to sink down anymore, but keep pulling up, that's a tremendous feat. So I'd like to talk about that. You felt that ceiling, you didn't quite know how to get through it. We often talk about the adjustments that need to be made when you go into that next stage. And right around the $1 million mark, it's people, processes, systems. But a good friend of mine, who happens to be a friend of yours as well, Clayton Mask, and I were talking about this the other day. And he said, actually, there's also a product adjustment that has to be made there. And, unprompted, you talked about the adjustments you were making in your product offering or your service so that you didn't have to fight so hard to keep the revenue at that level. Like there was start to get to this volume where so many clients that you have to sell in order to maintain that level, that revenue volume. And you guys made an adjustment to a higher ticket item by serving a higher business, a larger business with bigger budget. Right. And that allowed you to have fewer accounts and maintain or grow the revenue. So that's an adjustment that you had to make. So aside from the product adjustment though, let's talk about your personal adjustments as a leader, going from founder to now like capable business builder or CEO, what that looked like.
Yeah, I think that was the most important part, really, was that we had by name a lead team already established, even when when we went through Elite Form, I don't even know if we had a lead team established yet, but soon after we did. But as we were kind of moving through that $1 million barrier and that quicksand that went with it, we had established a lead team. And yet I think there was a time where I approached it like I was still trying to run everything. I was trying to lead every aspect of the business, and it still felt like everybody was coming back and, Jeremy, how do you want to do this? What are we doing with this? And while that can be frustrating as a leader, it's totally self-inflicted, because I create that culture in the company. And so it's the whole thing about just letting go and clearly defining the roles of other people on the team who have so much more to give and giving them a place where they can grow and step in and completely own something. And so you mentioned my private pilot's license. I got that a few years ago. And we had a metaphor at Spire where a few years ago, the lead team challenged me that my thing for the year, my one thing that I was going to focus on was to let go. And it reminded me that when I got my pilot's license, there's this thing that happens when the instructor takes you up in the plane and they say, you have flight controls. And I have to say, okay, I have flight controls, and they have to completely take their hands off the controls and let me control. And then if I pass it back, there's this clear passage. And the problem that was happening in my business was that I was saying that people had flight controls, but I still had my hand on the yoke and the pedals, and I was trying to control everything about that plane. As soon as a little bump, I would come in and grab the controls again. And so I think that was the key thing, was that I needed to leave space for them and to really learn how to fly the plane. And a metaphorical sense.
Yeah. Wow. You covered a lot of ground there, not just because we were flying with
Yeah,
the airplane, but you covered a lot of ground there. So I'd like to tease some of that apart if you don't mind.
sure.
So you talked about the challenge of letting go, and then you also talked about really being able to organize work and get the right people get the right people in the right seats, but give them the thing that they were going to be able to do. And one of the first transitions that I've seen over and over again is that first move towards creating a real leadership team. You called it a lead team, right? You weren't
Yes.
quite ready to call them managers or directors or whatever. Like, here's our lead team, but then you had a hard time really giving them ownership. I'd love if you could share any insights from your own personal journey about how you started to be able to let go, how you really created a leadership team eventually, right? Because I think those insights, that's what we struggle with. It's like, I get it, I need to let go. I get it, I need to start creating a leadership team, but how do you actually make it happen?
Yeah, well, I think it's still a daily struggle, but I think maybe the key parts would be you got to get the right people in those seats. First of all, people that you trust, people that really care about what's happening. And then I need to let go of the fears that I have that I have to do this or that. I have to leave room for people to fail, but they're not going to fail. Most of the time they're going to thrive. You just have to leave space for them to be able to do that. And then I think the other thing that we did is we got really clear about the roles, like what are the specific things that I'm accountable for as the visionary or the leader of the company. And then what are some specific things that a director of operations is responsible for, and a director of business development, a director of finance and administration. And so defining these clear roles that people own so that there's some boundaries there for my own sake, that I'm not overstepping them and I leave space for them within that.
Yeah. So I can imagine being in that cockpit with your instructor. They don't just say, okay, now that you're in the seat, I'm ready to just let go of the controls. Like, they have to know that there's clear ownership of the key things that allow us to continue to fly.
Right.
Once they know that you're ready to receive that, then they can say, okay, I'm letting go of the control. I'm passing them to you.
Yes.
Before that, they didn't just say, oh, you're in the seat, so I guess we're good. Here you go.
Yeah. Well, and taking that metaphor further, they handed me the flight controls when we were safely way up in the air first, but they didn't say, go ahead and land it. That was like a separate lesson on a separate day. And so I think that's the other part, is defining that in pieces that are picked up over time.
Yeah. Okay. So the instructor was helping you be successful with a thing, like that there was confidence that you were ready for the next step. And then there was a progression towards mastery, if you will. And it might be a little bit different when we hire somebody in from the outside to be our operations leader. There's a sense of, there's a belief anyway on both of your parts that guy's or that gal is going to know how to do that. Like, that's why I'm hiring them, to bring them in. But we still got to set them up for success. We got to make sure that they squarely have the controls before we say, okay, we're out.
Totally.
That's I'm glad we talked about you being a pilot. I love that analogy. That's fun. All right. So you started to build a leadership team. You're able to give clear ownership for each of the roles so that you could start letting go. What else? Was there anything structurally in terms of, I don't know, meeting rhythms or other processes that you found to be helpful as you were trying to let go more?
Yeah, I think one other thing that we did was we instilled some systems, and maybe not even, yes, there were systems, but I think maybe the more valuable thing there from my perspective was scorecards, to define some clear KPIs for each part of the team, and then ways that those things get measured. And then there's scorecards within teams, but there's also things that I want to see every week at a high level, and we worked with an advisor at one point who said, if you're on the beach and someone handed you this scorecard every day, are they things that can I stay on the beach another couple of days, or do I need to get home right now, sort of thing. And just having something that allows us to track what's happening in the company and know when we're in a strong position or when there are things that we may need to dig into.
All right. I love that. I'm going to make a distinction between clear ownership, which we've talked about a little bit, and the accompanying visible scorecard, right? And we can call them KPIs, we can call them dashboards, we can call them whatever we want, but there are clear metrics or measurable things that those owners are responsible for. And that gives you continued peace of mind or ability to say, okay, yeah, I don't have to go get involved over there. I can see that things are okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Great.
And I found too that we literally just in our leadership meeting earlier today, there was just a conversation. I think that I can sometimes bring a perspective if I don't get in the weeds that is helpful, that we can start looking at short-term immediate things and starting to worry. And I said, you guys, I'm not worried at all. I'm like, we're like these things that you're worrying about. Look at all these good things at a high level that are happening right now. And believe me, I worry plenty for everybody, but I'm feeling actually really good about the things that maybe they were worrying about. And that can be helpful too. But if I get too sucked into the details, then I can't bring that perspective.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you've almost turned the whole situation around, whereas before maybe they were the ones saying, don't worry about it, but you were worried. And now you have let go to the point where they're down in the weeds, they own it fully. They're starting to see things that are maybe concerning them. And you've got a different perspective altogether saying, oh no, it looks like things are going okay. So
yeah.
And could you speak to, I don't know if this is true for you, but I've spoken to enough business owners about this that I have a hunch that maybe there was a little bit of, I don't know, I guess I'll call it ownership or emotional burden that maybe you carried before. Does that feel any lighter now that you have real ownership and visible metrics and like,
oh yeah,
you feel less weight?
Definitely. And, I think the most specific and the most tangible way that I've felt that lift is in the very area that I was least comfortable letting go of. And that was the financials. And I used to have this feeling that when things were rough, that if I shared those things with other leaders or other people at all in the company, that they would just go running for the hills and that they would just say, I don't want to be a part of it. I just, like everybody assumes that everything's always perfect or something. And that was never true, but it took a long time for me to feel comfortable enough to really get real with people and be vulnerable enough to talk about the finances of the business. And then when I did hand that to other people and allow them to help carry that as well, it was such a burden that was lifted. And it was something that I know now that multiple people are thinking about all the time. And it wasn't just this thing I worried about after hours when I had time to actually think about that stuff.
I think that's a great observation and something that I see pretty regularly. And you said it really well. You have to care, especially on the finances, I think business owners often hang on to that the longest. And it's not like it's not important. It's not like, you shouldn't worry at all about it. But I don't know. Maybe as a business owner myself, there have been times in my business where every morning, the first thing I did was look at the bank balance, right? How are we doing? Are we still alive? Like there's this thing, it's like, I got to go check on that. And so I know what it feels like personally to be at a place now where it's like, oh, I don't have to look at that. I mean, I can check in on it occasionally, or I have the dashboard or whatever, but it's not all consuming the way that sometimes it has felt in the past. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I can relate to that. All right. So Jeremy, you learned some things about getting some key people in place, a leadership team. You learned some things about being able to really give them ownership and let go. Are there any other things as you reflect on your own journey as a leader in order to be able to scale your business? What other things come to mind that might help another business owner going through their own growth journey?
I think it may go back to that. We touched a little bit on the product focus and the moving upstream. And you mentioned Clayt said about that being a shift as well. I think it feels counterintuitive that you would sharpen your focus when you want to grow your business, but you have to. And I know we all know it, but we all forget it. And, I own a marketing agency. And so it's easy for me to tell another client of mine that they need to do it, but it's much harder for me to do it myself. But I think the simplest example that every business owner can probably relate to if they started a business is, when you're first starting, it's so tempting to just be a jack of all trades. Like I remember people when I was first, and I was the only guy running Spire and we were doing a lot of websites. Well, you guys do websites, you do like tech support and, can you fix my printer? And so, just all these random things that people assume, well, it's technical. You're like one of those geek people that you should be able to do all that. And I definitely could have fixed their printer, but if I had said yes to that early on, it would have been, and sometimes I think it may not be quite that extreme, but we take on things that aren't a perfect fit because it pays the bills, because it brings in the revenue. And as the business grows, you have to get more and more focused on the thing that you maybe originally dreamt that you wanted to start, or you need to get more focused on what the market presents itself. And find that space where you're going to say no to more and more so that you can say yes to the right things. And I think that's the only way to grow, because otherwise I've just found that it becomes unmanageable. If you're trying to do too much or you try to have too much complexity, you just have to keep it more focused. And that's still a challenge to this day. But I do feel like a big part of my role is I annoy people around me that I keep pushing to make things simpler And I think that's just so important.
Such a powerful insight, Jeremy. And like you use the word counterintuitive, it completely is. Like, I want to say yes to revenue coming in, but the more we say yes to a broad array of revenue opportunities, the harder it is to scale, the harder it is to keep moving forward because of the complexity. You said it, I think, just perfectly. So I don't want to belabor the point, but sometimes I want to underscore what my guests are saying. And
sure.
Your focus is the thing that will allow you to grow. You get so much benefit from doing similar things over and over again versus trying to go wide, an inch, what is it, a mile wide and an inch deep?
An inch deep, yeah.
Yeah, instead of just that really powerful, focused channel of energy. So love that you decided to throw that one on top of the wonderful lessons you've already shared. So Jeremy, as you think about your scaling journey, make sure you're surrounded with the right people, giving them ownership, real ownership, so that they can do what they're great at and you can let go. It's making sure that you've got the visibility to their metrics or those right dashboard elements that give you peace of mind and helps everybody know how we're doing on the whole. And last thing you said was, let's get focused. Let's niche more so that we can really lean in and provide value to the right group of people. That serves them better and it helps us be more profitable as well. So all great lessons. Anything else you want to leave us with, Jeremy, before we wrap this up?
No, I think just a general idea is like, don't give up, keep pushing. It's just like when you started your business, pushing through those thresholds. It's so tempting to go back a step and go back to what things were before, but you have to keep pushing forward. And so we were stuck in that quicksand or swamp or whatever I referred to it as. It wasn't a ceiling we just burst through, but over the last year, actually, we had 35% growth year over year. And it looks like this year we're on track for something like that again. And so, but there was a lot of years of struggle there to kind of break loose again. And so just keep pushing and keep focusing and it will pay off on the other side.
Well done on your long-term success, but your more recent growth as well. And thanks for spending time with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brett. My pleasure.
Hey, Jeremy, before we say goodbye, will you let our listeners know the best way to connect with you, whether that's your company website or via social? And you also do a podcast. I'd be happy to have you speak about that. So whatever you'd like to point people to.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, our agency is spiread.com, like Spire as in Spire advertising. So it's spiread.com. And we do a lot with account-based marketing and digital ads and really focused stuff to help people generate leads. And we also did just start a podcast this winter, and it's called The Savvy Marketer. And so you can find that on our website as well. So I encourage you to check that out as well.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again for being our guest today, Jeremy. Great insights.
My pleasure. Thanks, Brett.
You've been listening to the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Brett Gilliland. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You may also want to visit our website, eliteentrepreneurspodcast.com, to find additional resources to grow your business from 7 figures to 10 million and beyond.